In today's video, I'm going to show you how I use Snapseed to transform my landscape photos. So I'm diving into some landscapes today. I went out hiking the other day, and being the professional photographer that I am, I forgot an SD card, so I ended up not doing any video when I was out. So I thought, let's do something cool with Snapseed today. And we're starting off with this image here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just pressing the little pencil icon here. That brings up all our tools, and you can see there are loads of different things. Some of them I use all the time, some of them I basically never touch, but we're going to start off with just tune image. This is sort of your basic controls over brightness and contrast. I'm going to be going pretty quickly through this, so my apologies if it's tough to keep up, but hopefully it should just give you a very easy overview of what I would do. We're going to start off, I'm going to leave the brightness as it is, but I'm going to go down to the highlights and just bring those highlights down, because we've got a lot of highlights in the sky already. If you just tap the screen, press and hold on the screen, then you can see your before and after effects. So we've got a lot more rich detail in that sky already, maybe a little bit too much. Let's leave it at -50. The ambience tool is an interesting one because it can work well sometimes, but it basically gives your photos a very sort of HDR-y sort of effect. Let's just take that right up to the top. You can see that it's very, very saturated. The shadows have been brought right up. The highlights have been brought down. It doesn't look very good. I actually often find that it can look really good bringing the ambience down. It can create a bit more of like a moody tone, a bit more of an ethereal effect. It also softens the image just a little bit, which I think can look quite nice. In this instance, I am going to bring it down, but only by -10, just a small touch. I'm also going to bring the warmth up just a little bit, maybe +9, and the shadows I'm going to bring down to -10. So not a huge shift overall, but just enough to give it a little bit more pop, which I think looks nice. I'm going to apply that. So the next thing I'm going to do is go into tonal contrast. Now, tonal contrast is kind of similar to the clarity slider in Lightroom. Clarity is basically mid-tone contrast, but in this tool we get control over the high tones, the mid-tones, and the low tones. I don't want any mid-tone contrast, so I don't really want to be adding clarity to the scene because it goes very quickly. You can see how sort of crunchy those details get, and I really don't want that. I am going to add a little bit. I'm just going to go +10 on the mid-tones. On the high tones is where you can see the detail that it adds to the highlights. So that's very much in our sky, which is good because it adds some real pop and clarity to those clouds, which is nice. But if you go too far, we start to get a lot of these artifacts around the hill. We don't want that. It doesn't look good. So again, a subtle approach works well here. I think something around +15. And I don't really want anything at all in the low tones, so I'm going to take that down. It is going to be quite a small shift, not particularly noticeable, and certainly I doubt with the YouTube compression, I'm not sure you're going to really be able to see a lot, but all of these small adjustments do kind of add up to a really nice shot overall at the end. So I'm going to apply that. One of the tools that I like using most is the Grainy film. Let's just go into this, because this basically gives you a whole series of like color toning presets, very similar to using presets in Lightroom. But let's have a quick look through. I mean, already the first one, A01, looks really nice. I really love what it's doing to those tones. It's giving it a much more autumnal look, which I think looks great. But let's cycle through the rest. B4 also looks pretty nice. Yeah, these all look pretty good actually. So let's go. There aren't loads, and I would like to see if there's any way of adding like new packs that they offer, but I don't think they do. I think it's just this is what you get. But crucially, the difference is that in Lightroom, if you just click a preset, you just apply the whole preset, and you don't really have any control over what it's actually doing to your shot. Whereas with this, you can see that we do still have some controls over both the grain and the style strength. Now, grain, I don't want any grain added to this because it's already a little bit unsharp because it's just a phone shot and we've already done some edits to it, so I don't want to degrade the quality even further. But I do want to just tone down the strength. It's quite a lot right now. It's a bit too punchy. So I'm going to bring that down to 0, back to where we started from before we added this filter, and then just slowly bring it up to a point that I'm happy with. And for me, I think actually maybe a little bit less, something like that, 56% instead of 80, I think gives enough that it's just giving a bit more warmth to those colors, but it doesn't necessarily look like you've just slapped on a big old preset. So let's go and apply on that. And using these tools subtly is a really nice way of building things up, because you can layer these effects on top of each other to get your final look. So I'm going to go now into another tool. Let's have a little look around. Maybe vintage, because vintage can add some really nice effects to your shot. Again, they're very extreme in the looks that they give you. Let's have a quick flick through. Again, I like the autumnal tones that we've got from number 8. But crucially, again, it's doing a lot to the shot. We've got this big vignette, which I really don't like, so we can tone that right back down. A little bit is actually quite nice, somewhere around +7. The style strength, I think, is too strong. I want a lot less, I think just +10. I'm also going to bring the brightness down just a little bit, somewhere around there. I'm going to go actually back and add another tune image layer, and I'm going to bring the brightness down further still. But because we've darkened it, it also increases the saturation of some of the colors. So I'm just going to knock that saturation back. Not loads, -8, maybe -10. Yeah, just a little bit. I think that looks good. But the good thing is about working in Snapseed is that you can look at all the edits you've done. So we can see on this bottom right hand corner our tune image, our contrast, grainy film, vintage, and you can go back into any of these and change the settings that you've done. We could choose a different filter. I don't want to, I really like what we had to begin with, but you can do that, and then it goes back and it just fits that back in amongst those layers. So you don't have to undo those effects to go back and change it. It still keeps it in that layer stack, which makes it really easy to get the control over your final effect. Let's go then one more into let's go back into grainy film, because the great thing is that you can build these layers up. So maybe there's something that just has a bit of a look that we like. Let's say X01. It's got kind of cooler tones throughout, but still with that like autumnal orange feel on the heather. But it is way too strong. Firstly, we get rid of that grain and we bring it right back down, and we're only going to apply +20 to this. It's a small amount. It may not even be particularly visible on YouTube, but it is there. It's just a small touch. And that is pretty much everything that I think I want to do in this shot. If we just look at before, we've got the white balance isn't great. We've got very sort of vibrant green tones, and now we've given it a much more moody autumnal look, which I think is great. The last thing, of course, that we do want to do is we do have this figure standing up there in our shot. So I'm just going to go to healing, and oh dear, it's done that wrong. Undo. Bring up the healing brush, and you can literally just paint over that person, and it's pretty much flawlessly erase them. It's great. The tools that they have in Snapseed is really good. Just press OK, and there we go. We've got our first shot. I'm really pleased with how it looks. Yeah, there's not loads more I would want to do to this. You can play around as much as you want, and I would certainly encourage you to do so. This is completely non-destructive editing. You can go back, change those layers. You could just reload your photo and start again and do a completely different edit. I really enjoy with Snapseed just getting a cup of tea, sitting down and just playing around with it for a long time and seeing what I can get. But we're going to save this, go save a copy, which means that you can then load in your original again. And let's go and open up a new one. And let's do this one here, because I do like this shot. It's a very similar scene actually, but it's one that I think looks good. The great thing about Snapseed as well is that it is available on your phone. I'm using it on my iPad, just makes it a little bit easier to film, but normally I'd be using it on my phone, and it's dead easy just to go around and edit like that. The first thing I'm noticing with this is that we've got too much sky going on, so I know already that I want to do a crop, and I think I want to do a 4:3, no, 5:4, it was already on 5:4, crop, and I'm going to drag that down, just pull it down ever so slightly, like that. So now we've got our rule of thirds sort of applying to the bottom where this river starts in the frame. It snakes its way up through the image, and the top line of the rule of thirds is very much sort of going along where the base of those mountains kind of meet the land that we're standing on. So compositionally, I think this works quite nicely. So I'm going to apply that. And I'm going to keep this one fairly quick. I don't want to do loads to this. Let's go straight into our grainy film and let's have a look at what sorts of colours we could apply. The A1 is a little bit strong. I'm not sure about that. Let's try something different for this one. Okay, let's go with LO3. I liked that. So let's get rid of that grain. I don't want the grain. There's enough grain already. And we're going to just turn down the style strength to 65. We're going to press OK. It's going to go back in. And we're going to go to tune image just quickly. And just bring that brightness down. It is a little bright, and then we're going to bring the highlights down just a touch as well. What about those shadows? Ambience. The other thing that's great about this, and in fact this is the way I edit in any program, is you don't always know exactly the look that you want to go for. So it's a really good practice to grab a slider, whack it all the way down, whack it all the way to the top again, see what it's going to do to your photo and use that as inspiration for how you want to go. In this case, I don't know in advance what adding or reducing ambience is going to do, so I get hold of it and I drag it either way and I look and go, well, no, at 100% it's awful, and at minus 100% it looks a little bit weird as well, but somewhere around minus 20 I actually think looks pretty nice, so we can apply that. And that's the same with any of these effects. You don't necessarily know exactly what they're going to do. Let's look, for example, at HDR Scape, which is going to give it a very punchy, crispy HDR look. It's terrible. So what we can do is go filter strength right down to 0 and build it up a little bit like that. It's just adding a little bit more color, a little bit more pop, controlling those highlights slightly, maybe less than that, plus 8. This one's going to be a fairly subtle touch, but it's just enough. I quite like it. Let's apply that. And let's have another look at vintage and see what that is doing. There's some that I almost never touch. Drama, for example. It looks crispy and horrible and awful, and no matter what you kind of do to the sliders to really tone it down, it's very difficult to do anything. I just don't like what it does. It's too poppy, too crispy. It's not for me. So let's get rid of that. We're going to have a look at maybe vintage. And let's go back to style 1, style 2, style 4, blah, 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 blah. 8 actually, again, looks quite nice. Let's go with style 11. And let's turn off pretty much most of that vignette. We don't want a vignette, or much of one. The style strength is at plus 20. We're just going to go plus 8. This one's going to be a subtle touch, but it's nice. Again, it's warmed up those tones. It's given us a real autumnal shot, which I think looks particularly nice here. There is a figure in the scene here. I actually don't mind them. It gives a little bit of size context. But if we did want to remove that, again, it's very simple. Go into healing, zoom in, and literally just boop, and they're gone. And it's flawless, and you would never know that there was someone standing there. Okay, that's it for that. Let's export, saving a copy, and open up another one. And which one am I going to open now? I've got a few lined up. Oh, this one will be interesting. So this one was actually taken in RAW format on my iPhone using the Moment app, which gives you raw sheeting, which is nice because you get a little bit more control in post. But Snapseed does have its own RAW editor. So now we've loaded this up, we can see that we've got exposure, highlight, shadows, contrast, structure, blah, blah, blah. Exactly the same as you'd get loading up a raw photo in Lightroom. So it's really, really powerful editor. Exposure I'm going to just drop a little bit. It is a touch bright, but the highlights in the sky really need to be brought under control because they are very, very bright. So I'm going to bring that down to minus 70. That's quite a lot. I'm going to boost those shadows a little bit on the mountain just because they are a little bit too dark. I'm not going to touch the contrast, but I am going to slightly boost the structure because there's no sharpening applied when you're shooting in RAW, so we do just need to give it that little bit more crispness. The saturation I'm going to boost slightly because the RAW file was a bit flat, and I'm going to increase ever so slightly the temperature. I'm also going to bring up the tint from +7 to +9. Very, very small amount, but I think it just adds a little bit more of that, those nice warm colours that we had. So I'm going to press apply, which basically opens the shot into Snapseed proper. You can still go back into the raw develop tool and make any more adjustments to that as you want, but we're not going to because we're done there. So let's go to, first of all, let's go straight into our Grainy film tool and see what we might want to apply here. And again, actually, straight off the bat, the L03 looks lovely. But of course, we will have a look through at the other ones first in case there's something that looks even nicer. But no, L03 looks great. Get rid of that grain. Don't want it. Bring down the style strength. This time we're going to apply around 50. And so already we're looking pretty good. That was our straight out of camera raw. Here's where we've got to so far. I think that's looking pretty nice. There's a couple of specific tools that I want to use on this. One of them is the selective tool. This allows you to brighten or darken certain areas. It's a little bit like using dodging and burning. There is also a brush tool, but I like working with this one because you can just dot and add in a control point. B stands for brightness, C for contrast, saturation, structure. But where it's applying is basically in this big circle, and you can pinch to zoom to move that circle around. And basically everything that's red is where this is going to apply. So in this instance, it's basically sticking right to those shadows. And that's exactly what we want because we want to kind of boost those shadows a bit. So we're going to bring up the brightness. We're also going to bring up the contrast a little bit and add a little bit of that saturation. The other S for structure. This isn't adding loads, it's not doing a lot, it's just a little extra kiss of light across those mountains. It just brings out some of the detail on those rocks, which I really like. So I'm going to apply that. The other thing I'm going to do is just play with the perspective, because the way I was shooting kind of from below this mountain, I feel like it squashed it in a little bit. The angles don't quite work for me. They look a little bit off, and so I'm going to just play with this perspective for that reason. I use the free option here where it says, you know, tilt, rotate, scale, or free, because it gives you these 4 control points on your image. So basically you can drag it around and sort of skew the shot in any way you want. And for me, what I want to do is just bring this left mountain sort of up and out a little bit, adjusting for that low angle that I had. I'm going to bring this down and out. This I'm just going to move slightly up and this slightly in like that. And the good thing you might have noticed, if I just bring this down even more, on the top right corner, now that's sort of black, and well, you don't want a big slice of black in your image, but actually it digitally fills that space in. And certainly in like a sky, that works really, really well. Maybe if you were doing a building or a pattern, it might not get it quite right, but certainly with just basically a blank area, Snapseed does a great job of filling that in. We can have a look before and after, and I think that's done a great job in just moving things back into kind of the way that they actually were without the distortion from my iPhone's lens. So I'm going to press OK. I think that's looking really, really nice. We could just have a little bit more of a play, add another grainy film filter over the top. Maybe this time we'll go with something like, you know what, none of these are really appealing. Maybe we won't do this. But, you know, nice to try. What about X04, but just a little bit of it? Just a touch, just 30. Yeah, that's okay. giving a little bit more autumn tone onto that mountain. I think that looks really nice, and I might just go back into... Oh, actually, no, let's go tonal contrast. And again, let's get rid of our mid-tones, let's get rid of our low tones, but just in the high tones, just adding a little bit more pop and detail to those clouds in the sky. If we go before and after, now you can see that there are clouds there a little bit more, whereas before it all sort of blurred together into one sort of empty white mass. We can maybe help that a little more, go into our tune image, bring those highlights down, not a little bit, just like that. What's the ambience going to do for us here? Oh, nothing good. We don't want that. Okay, let's leave ambience as it is. So all we've done is just slightly tune those highlights, and overall then I think we've got a really nicely balanced image, great tones. The one thing that is bothering me actually slightly down in the bottom left corner, with in adjusting our image we sort of cut off these rocks, and I don't like anything being cut off. It's either got to be in the shot or not in the shot. So we're going to bring up our healing tool, zoom in, and just paint out these rocks. And again, you can see just how easy it is to do that. These ones are in the shot, these ones are fine, and if anything they add a nice bit of sort of detail down in what would otherwise be just an empty bit of water, so that's quite good. So we've clicked OK, and there is our shot. I think that looks great. Save a copy. So the last one I'm going to do, I'm going to make this one very, very quick, is going to be this one here. So this is what I did as a long exposure shot by using live photos on iPhone. If you want to find out more about how to do that, I'll leave a link to an article I did for CNET about how to make great long exposure photos with your iPhone. But crucially with this, there's a couple of things I want to do straight away. I want this to be a one-to-one crop. All the information is very much in the center of the frame. We've got a lot of empty sky above and a lot of empty water below. So a one-to-one square crop is going to let us just neaten up this composition. We put the rock in the lower thirds, the mountain in the top thirds, and that's just made everything look a little bit better. Now, it may be possible to see that this is not a good quality image. Doing those long exposures just makes your details very, very mushy, which isn't great. I would not use this image for a portfolio. I would not submit it to a competition or anything like that, but it's probably fine for Instagram or just to share with your friends, so it's good to see. The other thing I'm going to do straight away is this rock on the left is distracting. We've got this nice one in the middle which lines up with the mountain. This one is a bit distracting. I could have shifted my shooting angle. I didn't. I don't normally like taking things out of an image like this, but for the purposes of this, and because I'm not going to submit this image anywhere, I don't mind doing it. And literally, just go in, paint around it, and then boop, done. It's pretty much flawless. I like that a lot. Okay, straight away, tune image. What do we want to do? Brightness down ever so slightly. Ambience down a little bit too. If we go too far up, it goes to HDR-y, and I like this one being a little bit more subtle. I'm going to bring down the highlights a touch, and the shadows I'm going to bring down a little bit too. Okay. Grainy film. Again, I told you, I love grainy film. It looks great. So many options. And with this one, let's go for something a little bit different. That's very cool. Okay. I said different. I can't remember which ones I've used before. Have I used XO4? I'm going to use it now. I like it. It's too strong though. We're going to bring it right down to about 50. I think that's looking good. We're also going to use... I mean, maybe black and white might actually work for this. Actually, no, I don't think black and white does work. But, you know, again, it's very easy just to turn it on and give it a try. Some of the ones that I really don't like using, Retrolux adds in all these like very strong filters and light leaks and noise and filters over the top. Don't like that. And Grunge does very similar in all these sort of like textured effects, which I really don't like, so I almost never use those. The vintage one, though, again, I do enjoy using, and I think it might work quite well here. Which one? Maybe this one. Let's get rid of that vignette for the most part. I can stand to have a bit more because it works kind of well. The style strength is too much. I'm going to bring it down to that and also darken it. And then let's add one more grainy film. Get rid of the grain. turn the style down. And that is everything I want to do. Done. That was only a few minutes. So I know this has been a fairly rushed video. Hopefully it's been easy enough to follow along, but what I wanted to get across was how powerful Snapseed can be for editing your landscape. So don't just think because it's free it's not going to be very good. You can do some really, really great stuff with it. If you have enjoyed this video, do please hit that like button, subscribe if you don't already, and I will see you next time.